Hello, welcome to Warriors Remembered. We're honoured to be taking part in Belfast City Council's Mayday Weekender, and what we want to do is give people an insight of what they would see when they come and visit Warriors Remembered. The collection spans hundreds of years of military service and social history of the island. More specifically, in the last 100 years of Northern Ireland, from the Home Rule crisis from 1912 onwards to the Great War, the Second World War and the Home Front collection. Behind us is part of the Home Rule collection, and it relates to the Irish Volunteers, the Ulster Volunteer Force, the signing of the Ulster Covenant at City Hall in Belfast, to the Ulster Hall Rally, including the gun running that took place at Larne, Donaghadee and Howth in Dublin. It's a massive story in its own right, and it helped shape the country to what it is today. We have many unique stories here at Warriors Remembered, none better than the one that's on display behind us here. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Blair Main, co-founder of the SAS. Robert Blair Main was not just an elite soldier, he was an avid sportsman. He, at Queen's University in Belfast, was the heavyweight boxing champion. He was also 6 times capped for Ireland and also played in the British and Irish Lions Tour of 1938. Robert Blair Main was not just a solicitor, Freemason, but also we have just uncovered a massive story on his role that he played in FIDS, which took over from Operation Tarbin in 1945 when he went to survey the Antarctic expedition. Very proud of the Women in War exhibition that we have at Warriors Remembered. We have the stories of individual women that served in the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. One of the unique uniforms that we have is this one beside me here, is that of Frances Main, the sister of the legendary Colonel Paddy. She served with the ATS during the war years with the 51st Ulster Heavy Anti-Aircraft Regiment, and it is only a small part of the story that we tell of the women from Northern Ireland who fought during the war years. These women actually released men and allowed men to go off and fight on the front line. Women like the women of the ATS who manned the searchlights, like the one we have on display here, or manned the anti-aircraft gun. Some women in the WAF actually flew aircraft over from England and landed them at airfields here so they could be issued with kit and equipment and their air crews before going off to war. It's an amazing story in its own right, and it deserves to be told. For a long, long time, women were left out of the history books. This is a part of our Great War exhibition. We're quite proud of the story that we tell on Irish Cavalry, as Irish Cavalry were the first to fight and the last to die. On the 22nd of August 1914, the 4th Royal Irish Dragoon Guards, an Irish Cavalry regiment, rode into the little village of Leacat, swords in the air, charging against the Germans. Corporal Edward Thomas from Wexford is reputedly to be the first soldier who fired the first shot of the First World War, killing the first German. Later on in 1914, just before armistice was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, yes, Irish Cavalry again, George Ellison from Leeds, of Irish descent, serving in the 5th Royal Irish Lancers, was the last soldier reputedly killed before armistice was signed. Here we are in part of our trench system, which tells the story of the men that came up through the Home Rule crisis, formed the 10th Irish, the 16th Irish Division and the 35th Ulster Division. The icons here don't only just tell the story of the artefact itself, but they also tell the individual stories of the men that actually fought through the Great War, like the 6th Connacht Rangers, the men from the Falls Road who went off and fought in the 16th Irish Division, the men of the 35th Ulster Division that fought from Carson's army, the guys that in 1917 the Americans come into the war after the Lusitania was sank. And there was a lot of Irish Americans, a lot of people don't realise that actually fought during the Great War. But also during the First World War, the Americans brought with them the Spanish flu, which originated in a poultry farm in an American army camp. This is part of our home front collection here. We've recreated a whole 1940s house because we didn't want to just tell the story about the men and women that fought in foreign shores and the services. We want to tell the story of the people that endured the war years here on the home front. More specifically, the men and women that volunteered for the ARP, the Civil Defence, National Fire Service, the Auxiliary Fire Service, but the men and women that also worked on the land and in the Women's Land Army Corps, or those that went out and worked in the factories, the likes of Mackey's in Belfast, the Shorts Harland Shipyard, producing the items which were needed for the war effort. Back in April and May of 1941, the Germans decided to attack Belfast. From the air, the Luftwaffe dropped bombs, a rain of fire down on the city. One of the bombs that fell that night was this 1 kilogram German incendiary bomb, dated 1937. Some of our favourite stories here are these personal stories, and not just about the sacrifice, the loss, the separation, love, but this one here is about the happy side of things that happened during the war years. And on the 20th of December 1941, Ron went and married his childhood sweetheart, Miriam Knight. We're quite lucky to have the actual wedding dress, the uniforms and the photograph and a lot of his other personal items. It's an amazing story in his own right, and Ron went on to fight in the 14th Army, what was known as the Forgotten Army, off in Burma against the Japanese. As a result of those bombs falling on Belfast, we suffered over 1,000 casualties during those 4 raids on Belfast. We have here one of the memorials counting those war deads. This one belongs to the Christ Church in Belfast. The church has since been refurbished and given over to RBAI as a library for the school. But the memorial itself here covers not just the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, with the last 2 entries on it are both civilian war dead killed in the Percy Street shelter when it collapsed. The most important thing about War Years Remembered is remembrance. Our veterans' artefacts, their stories, their memories are in the very fabric of what is War Years Remembered. We're here to remember all those touched by war, no matter country, colour, religion or creed. We will remember them.